So, what have you eaten today? Which is very apropos for you, of course.
I've got the worst answer ever to this question. I've got the most embarrassing answer. At least I'm embarrassed by the answer. I had 2 Taco Bell breakfast Crunchwrap Supremes.
For breakfast.
Yeah.
Well, you definitely fit into, I think, the majority of the population that seems to go to fast food a lot. And then that dovetails into what you're doing on your YouTube channel, which is getting drunk and going to fast food places. So tell us a little bit about what's going on there with your YouTube show.
I'll tell you the genesis of it was McDonald's was advertising that Air, Land, and Sea burger, where they had the Big Mac with a filet of fish and a McChicken all built into it. And I was guesting on a podcast, and I thought it would be really funny if I show up and just pull that monstrosity out and start eating it. I didn't realize you had to actually deconstruct these sandwiches and put them back together, and that was a little much for me. So I still held up the thing and made the joke. I just had them in their boxes. And as I'm known to do, I probably a month later, I got very, very drunk at home. And I decided I was hungry, and I was drunk enough that I would deconstruct these sandwiches. And in my head, and in fairness, it's not breaking the bank, but I've been able to monetize at least a little bit. So it's worked. The concept of I'm just going to record this because look, I'm going to be drunk and eating this horrible food, regardless of whether anybody's watching me. I might as well make it content. And that was that, and it's not huge, but it's enough that I've built. I just passed 1,200 subscribers, and that's mostly what I end up doing now on my YouTube channel is just eating food.
That's so funny because the fast food world is so attractive to so many people, and you'll find yourself getting more subscribers to people who want to watch a drunk guy eating fast food than just listen to a guy doing an interview, a typical interview. So tell us a little bit about some of these experiences that you had, and then I'm going to want to break it down as to who's doing what, and what's delicious and what's not so.
Oh, for sure. Let's see. The place I've frequented the most is Arby's. I think I've done 5 or 6 of my. I think I'm over 30 now. I think I've done 5 or 6 at Arby's. They keep adding new menu items, and that's really what I try to key on because the things that do best, get the most views, are the things you keep seeing on TV all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think there is. I've even gotten into this on occasion of I wonder what that actually looks like when it's actually delivered. And instead of going and getting the food like I'll go on YouTube and I'll say, I just want to see someone, I don't stick around for the whole video to watch them eat it, but I just want to see them unwrap it and hold it to the camera and compare it to what that gorgeous thing that I see on the TV compared to what's in their hand. So that's what I try to key on is I see a commercial for a fast food item and I try to remember when I'm intoxicated. That sometimes is problematic as well.
So from my point of view, I'm a consumer of marketing and of advertising and of the way businesses do their work. And so from my point of view, when I see the Arby's commercials, I'm thinking, wow, they seem inventive and they're coming up with a lot of interesting products. So tell us about which of their products are doing really well, in your opinion, what tastes really good, and do they look anything like the advertising?
The last thing I got was they're advertising the perfect bite. It's mac and cheese with fried chicken and bacon in it, and there is one thing that's always a wild card is whether the restaurant's going to serve it fresh and it's going to be delivered still fresh. I got this, it was piping hot. It says warning, stir this before you eat it, so everything's all mixed in. It was fantastic. It was great. I'm not too fond of fast food pasta because typically it's overcooked and soggy, usually not hot enough when it gets delivered. This at least in this instance was an exception. And then I also got, this is from, I feel like Arby's gains a lot of sales probably by just coming up with one new item here or there because, Uber Eats, for example, you have to have $15 of food to get free delivery. So, that $5 bowl isn't enough. So I get 2 more sandwiches on top of it. So they've got a garlic ribeye sandwich, which is good. The second one was not nearly as good as the first one.
Uh-huh.
But the garlic aioli they use is very flavorful and tasty, so it's still a pleasurable thing to shove down your mouth, especially when you're intoxicated.
You know, you made a really good point just a moment ago. You kind of just went right over it, but you're using Uber Eats, so you're having someone deliver you stuff, so you're not drinking and then driving, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Good.
Yeah, the only inauthentic thing I've done on my Drunk Jeff Eats is I have recorded a couple when I've been sober.
Were you pretending to be drunk during those?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
So, okay, the truth always comes out, Jeff.
Yeah, there were at least two where I was not just like sober, like I hadn't drank that day, like sober, like I hadn't drank in a week, that I recorded. But I'm like, I feel like I got to put something out. And, you know, in fairness, it's easy for me to say I only eat fast food when I'm drunk. It still looks good and tastes good when you're sober.
Oh, of course.
It's an excuse being drunk. I did one. Unfortunately, it's no longer a menu item for a place called Metro Diner, which is only in like a handful of states, and it was a patty melt with bacon grilled cheese as the crust of the sandwich.
Oh, nice.
So this was a stacked sandwich. It was beautiful. It tasted, and it was a breakfast place. So I did it in the morning. I put on sunglasses, pretended I said I was still drunk. I was still partying from the night before. That was a lie. I was I wasn't. I was completely sober for 4 or 5 days. I had my kids upstairs, so I was quiet, so it kind of sounded like I was drunk. The restaurant liked it. They reached out to me and thanked me for my review, although they removed the item a few weeks later, unfortunately. I did. My latest one actually was a McDonald's breakfast, and that was authentic. I was as close to hungover as I get. I woke up on my couch from a night of binge drinking. I really was like, I'm going to go up to bed and go back to sleep. And I said, you know what? I could eat something. So turn on the camera.
You know, it's pretty wild that you've actually kind of stumbled upon a niche that was not really a niche because it was just part of your day-to-day existence, right? Just getting drunk and eating fast food was part of your world, and you decided, oh, let me just turn on the camera, and now you're finding your following.
Yeah, it's that's one thing I don't. Somebody told me, it was one of my friends, I'm sure, but they're like, you know, if you can monetize things you're already doing on a regular basis, make your life a little bit easier than, you know, trying new things. Just do what you're doing and throw a camera on while you do it.
In a lot of ways, that makes sense because it's not something you really have to rehearse for. It's not something that you really have to script. You just do you, and you turn on the camera and let people find you.
Yeah, and it's the people who find me typically are looking for, like me. Although, when I started it, I was going through some of the YouTube trends and things that you can look at, and I was getting a lot of people who were searching for ASMR food, so they just wanted to watch people eat and hear them eat.
Yeah.
That's when I made a decision to play background music and edit the videos so my chewing is almost non-existent in them. I take a bite and then I'm talking. It's like the food just disappeared. It's not, you know, so I'll record for 20 minutes and come out with a 7-minute video because I'm taking all of the chewing out of the eating, because even though I should have probably just leaned into it, the idea of someone like me watching me eat and just finding pleasure in it just creeped me out a little bit.
Well, you know, the ASMR crowd out there is fairly large, so by doing that, you're eliminating the opportunity to have that many more followers, perhaps.
Potentially, yeah. I'm curious whether it would be an interesting experiment to kind of dovetail and have one that was AMSR based and one that's more the way I'm going to see. I don't know if the two would like the same video, you know?
Right. Well, but it's all a matter of how many like this one or that one. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, that's a good question.
So I'm going to circle around to the beginning. Just tell us a little bit about, you know, your upbringing, where you're from, and some of the experiences that you've been through that have gotten you to this place.
Sure. I was born and stayed in St. Petersburg, Florida, my whole life. I even went to college, USF, St. Pete's campus. When I was in college, I didn't go to class all that much, even though I did graduate cum laude, but I worked for the Tampa Bay Rays, whose stadium, Tropicana Field, is only 2 miles away from USF St. Pete's campus.
What a crap stadium that is.
Yeah, I've got a soft spot for it. It definitely is it's a warehouse. It was old when it was new, if that makes sense.
Yeah, right.
It was
right.
like, when did they build this? The 60s? No, they built it a few years ago. Why is it so old? The only thing I say about it is, it's like, I wouldn't want to sit outside for 3-4 hours in Florida summer weather. I like the fact it's inside. That's really the only thing. It's like, it's nice air conditioning.
Yeah, right.
And I got to know, when I worked there, I got to know the bowels of that stadium. I got to know where every little closet was, and yeah, it was an interesting place to work at a young age, and it was a glamorous job, really. I mean, I remember just having the thought of self-reflection. I was battling depression pretty badly when I was in college working for the Rays. I went to a couple therapy sessions, and then a couple weeks later, I'm just sitting there. I'm in the first team meeting of the season. And I was in the communication staff, so they had the 5 of us in there because we're the go-to person if they have any issues or questions with the media. They need to know us, so if we ask them to do something, they need to do it. But I'm there, and Joe Madden, probably going to be a Hall of Fame manager, is giving his pep talk to the team. And it now, at least locally, became a famous thing of 9 equals 8. If we do this, this, and this, we get 9 more wins in these 3 areas. We'll be one of the 8 teams to make the playoffs. And the Rays were last place in the league for many years consecutively prior. And we ended up going to the World Series that year. And I was in with the players and the coaches and was there for Joe Madden's pep talk. And I'm just like, not a lot of college kids, 21 years old, get to just sit around in a with a bunch of major leaguers and listen to, again, at the time he was viewed as kind of a crackpot manager, but now he's, Joe Madden, the guy who took the Cubs, won a World Series with the Cubs.
Right.
That was just a moment of realization. Didn't pay well, but it was a glamorous job. And my last semester of college, found out that my girlfriend was pregnant. So I took the highest paying job I could get, which was in insurance claims. 22 to 25, I like to say. I had my first child. I got married. I got promoted multiple times at work. I had back surgery. I had my second child. And by 27, I was separated. So I had my full 20s, 30s, and into my 40s from the age of 22 to 27. So that kind of left me in an odd place. Having 2 children, divorced, and still be a very young guy. I mean, at 27.
Right.
So I kind of I leaned heavily into the alcohol and heavily into depression and considering suicide. And eventually I came to the place to realize, the biggest drain on my life is the job. And I'm not insurance claims. I was good at it. I moved up the ladder, and when you get good at a job like that, a lot of times that means you're dealing with people who got hit by cars and got killed. You're talking about people who got maimed in car accident, children that got hit by cars. And honestly, I was having dreams about these things with my children, of course, in place of the person who actually got hit by a car. And it was a heavy thing. I don't know. I couldn't keep doing it. And that's when I made a few financial moves and said, I'm going for broke. I'm going to try to write. I'll perform comedy. I'll do anything to be in the comedy industry because that's what I really love. So whatever doors may open from that, I'm fine. I don't care if I'm a writer or a podcast host or whatever, as long as I can make enough to survive. I just need enough money to live on because I want to enjoy what I do every day.
Yeah. And have you found that place?
I'm getting closer.
Good. You mentioned that when you were in college that you were experiencing depression and anxiety and things like that, but you didn't talk about the drinking until a little bit later. Was it all kind of the same? Did it come out of the same place? You see any connection there?
It's very interesting because I do think with many people and many therapists I've gone to have tried to kind of go down that route, and eventually they all lead to, I don't think the drinking's its own problem, but I don't think it's related to the depression directly, at least.
That's so interesting when you think about it, right?
Yeah, it's kind of confounding even to me. I think the way I always I'm trying to think of an appropriate way to explain it. I was a very shy person. Like I wouldn't, do anything that I'm doing now when I was, 18, 19 years old. When I started drinking, obviously it makes you a more social person. In the beginning, 19, 20, 21 years old, it was a crutch. Like I can't, I'd go to a party and stand in a corner until I got my 8th beer down, and then I'd be the life of the party. But that's not a functional way to go through life.
Sure, sure.
Eventually, it became like a light switch. I can be the same person whether I'm sober or I'm drunk. Obviously, if I'm drinking a lot, I'm going to be a little different, but I can have fun either way. So it was almost just, I did that to break through my shyness, and now I'm to the point where, actually when I had you on my podcast, I had mentioned I was considering a long time without alcohol.
Yeah.
And I did turn that switch on, and I went 19 days without having a single drop of alcohol.
Fantastic.
I lost 11 pounds in those 19 days.
Yeah.
And I did hang out with friends a few times during that stretch. It wasn't like I was a hermit. I wasn't unsociable or anything like that, which was actually the main test to me was, will I just sit at home and watch TV and be sad, or will I go out and socialize? And I still did go out with the people. I
right,
disappear.
sure.
I did several podcasts completely sober. That was good. I'm back drinking now, not this second, but but that was a good test. But going back to the depression part, I'm not sure. I've always kind of pigeonholed that as, I don't know, that almost addressed my anxiety, my social anxiety aspect, and now that's gone. So drinking's an on and off thing that helps. But one thing I have always said to people who drink emotionally, I do think that's a big problem. Meaning, I'm someone who says, if you're going to drink because you want to drink. Don't drink because you're upset. Don't drink because you're exhilarated. Don't drink because of emotion. Drink because you just want to drink. And I think that maybe helps it not be something that, it's not an emotional thing. It's, I don't, my younger sister always says, she's a Jets fan, so after every game, I need to drink. And it's like, don't drink because you want to drink. Don't drink because the Jets ruined your day. And I think that's my little healthy coping mechanism to explain away my drinking.
Oh, that's interesting. So when you had your back surgery, was that a result of an injury or an accident, or what happened there?
No, I just have a genetically bad back. My mom's had tons of surgery. She was bedridden for a decade. So no, it was just my back went out one day. I lost the feeling in my right leg for a few months while my then wife was pregnant, which wasn't the best timing. I couldn't drive to work because I couldn't drive a car because I couldn't feel my leg. So it was problematic, kind of fast-tracked to having surgery to remove all of the junk. I didn't need any hardware put in. I just needed a bunch taken out so that, my nerve endings were not compromised. But yeah, it was just genetic. And actually, that is funny with talking with alcohol. When I had my back surgery, it was long enough ago that the answer while you had your pain pre-surgery was throw pills at it.
Right,
and,
sure.
I had a few surgeries before, and I remember a really bad side effect of painkillers is when you try to go to the bathroom.
Is that right?
Yeah, it clogs you up. You better be taking a lot of stool softener if you're going to be on painkillers. And with my back, I would take the muscle relaxer, take the painkiller, and after a few days, I went to the toilet, went on the toilet, and was there for a few hours, and said, "I'll keep taking the muscle relaxers. I am not touching these pain pills again."
Mm-hmm.
Can you go to the liquor store and just buy me whiskey? So that was my pain medicine. Really was I'd drink a handle of whiskey every day, and that probably did something to my tolerance as well, where it wasn't like I was getting sloppy drunk every day. It was just I was able to get through the day without wanting to scream in pain. I never really thought of that. It probably has something to do with my tolerance today of how much alcohol I can put into me, because I was kind of conditioned that way at a young age.
That's right. So, okay, you're a very young guy. Are you? And this is definitely not a self-help show for sure. But in the arc of your life thus far, are you looking at ways to improve your happiness level and your health level and things like that? And does it have anything to do with the drinking or the drugs or whatever else you might be ingesting?
I think the main thing right now, I got cast as a lead role in a comedy film August of last year. We finished shooting in October, and it hopefully comes out in March.
Oh, cool. Do you want to plug that?
Yeah, it's called Women Want Everything. I'm not sure where it will be. I didn't produce it, didn't direct it, just acted in it. But my
so we
name's
don't
on
know
the
if
movie
it's
poster.
we don't know if it's going straight to video or whether it's actually going to go into theaters.
I'm not sure. I know we're having a theatrical premiere, but I don't know if that's just one showing for the cast and crew and family kind of thing.
Inside someone's home.
No, it's not. I've been told that this director throws big premiere parties. So, and he's putting together press kits. So I've been getting emails from him lately. Like this company, I think their last 2 movies have gone to Amazon Prime. So, they'll be visible for sure.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, so I got the acting bug, and I'm you can't really necessarily tell from this angle, but I'm a pretty large guy. So the main thing I would like to do, looking at casting for future film projects, TV projects, is I don't want to be the fat guy.
Right.
So I want to lose weight so that it opens up. Being a fat guy, you're kind of, you got to just be a character actor.
Mm-hmm.
Being 60 pounds lighter, I could be a leading man, or I could still do comedy. You can still be thin and funny. You can't be fat and be a leading man. It's just the way it is. I still prefer comedy, to be clear, but a lot of roles are, we want a guy with an average build. Well, I'm not going to be average.
Above average.
Yes. Yeah. I'm smaller than I was. When Women Want Everything comes out, I was probably 10 to 15 pounds heavier in that than I am now. So I'm heading in the right direction.
How are you going to track that? How are you going to make that happen?
Having a concrete plan is difficult. Because, one example is this show I got hired to co-host is what we've done I think we've done 17 episodes, and probably 8 to 10 of them are cooking. We're testing out, he'll buy stuff, send it to me, so I'm getting a lot of free stuff as well. And we'll cook on camera, and we'll talk, and we'll test out these items. So it's hard to regulate a diet a little bit when really part of my job now is to cook food, and no one wants to see me cooking. It's called The Man Show Live, so we're not cooking healthy recipes, unfortunately.
There was a show called The Man Show 10, 20 years ago, right? Mm-hmm. Adam Carolla and people like that.
Yes, yeah. Adam Carolla and Jimmy Kimmel. So it's more of a steaks and sausage and potato, that kind of food is more of what the focus is. It's the guy who hosts it is plays a man's man, so that's, I actually started that show when I was sober, and I was just drinking water that I'd have to lie and say was something else, or the only unhealthy thing I did is after my son's football practice, I'd swing by McDonald's, get them McDonald's, and I'd get a large Diet Coke, because their Diet Cokes are somehow better than every place else's. So I just say, I put some rum in here. I pretended I was drinking. But during the time when I got hired, I was actually on a very strict diet while I was sober. I'm eating only vegetables, meat, eggs, a lot of eggs. Even my meat, I had boundaries to it where I knew that I needed to limit how much beef I had, or I would overdo it. Because I didn't want it to be keto, but keto close, if that makes sense.
Sure.
I let myself have beans. I don't know if beans are on keto. Probably not.
Definitely not.
But I let myself have beans twice, or two servings of beans a week. Just little things like that were different than keto, but close enough. And I did that for 2 weeks until the show started. And the first week, the weight just dropped off immediately. The second week was pretty level. The third week was my last week, and I was eating the, donuts that we were making and stuff like that on the show. So I still was losing weight because I wasn't drinking alcohol. And then I started drinking again. So I think my plan is to go back to that when I can. Unfortunately, it's one of those things. I feel like this is probably an unhealthy attitude actually to have. Is I need to plan it out to schedule to make sure when I plan on being sober, I don't have anything coming up that's going to be a problem. I do think. And I understand people who do have a problem with alcohol. I know people who have told me straight up, if I have one sip of beer by the end of the night, I'm going to be doing crack with a homeless person in the alley.
Yeah. But you don't see yourself like that.
No, I always thought what I would like to do is I would like to be the guy who literally would be like, I'll have one beer, not as a regimented thing, like it's just a social nicety of, do you want a beer? Sure, I'll take a beer. Drink a beer and that's it. I don't need to get drunk. I don't need to drink the next day. I don't need to drink again. It doesn't need to be a focal point of my plan. It just is something I can or cannot do depending on whatever circumstances. That I feel like is the best handle someone can have on alcohol.
It's probably the best handle, the best place for anybody to be in the practice of life is to be in that kind of moderation place, because otherwise there's trouble a brewing. And so if you can eat the goodies occasionally and have a drink occasionally and do the naughty things only occasionally, then you're probably in a much healthier place than doing anything in an excessive way. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You're right. It applies. Everyone's got their version of what I have with alcohol. I
right.
think.
Right.
For my mom, it's sweets.
Mm-hmm.
For my older sister, it's exercise. You know, when she had COVID and was sick, she couldn't exercise and she was losing her mind.
Yeah.
It's like, that's not healthy either. I mean, obviously exercising is healthy, but it's still in kind of an addiction thing in a weird way.
That's right. But still, I think that probably, if you were to choose your addiction, probably exercise would work.
I wish that was my addiction. Yes.
Yeah, right. Take us back to your kids. What are their ages right now? And I'm guessing that you and your former wife are sharing them, a back and forth kind of agreement. So how does that work?
Yeah, my daughter is going to turn 13 next week. My son is 10. And yeah, 50-50 custody. They go back and forth. You know, Monday, Tuesday with her, Wednesday, Thursday with me, and we split every other weekend. And we get along very well now, me and my ex-wife. Part of it was we got married. She was 22 and I was 25. I mean, we were children.
Oh, yeah.
And we had a child already when we got married too, so kind of momentum pushed us in that direction, I would say. So I think once the animosity boiled off, which was pretty quick, it was never contentious over custody of the kids or anything like that. But now we get along very well as far as she wants to take the kids to her mom, so can she have a couple days here, or you know, when I was shooting the movie, occasionally I'd be like, can you take them today? It's probably going to be a 14-hour day. You mind just keeping them all day and I'll pick them up in the morning? Never any issues with that. So we get along well.
It's great and healthy to be able to negotiate things like that easily with a former or an ex.
Yeah, I'm very fortunate in that regard because it allowed me, my philosophy is generally to try to, I always looked at it like 50% is like the minimum. So I always try to suck any amount of time I can where it's like, you know, I have a couple free hours and, you know, one of my kids, if they're not in school, of course, I'm going to swing by and pick Bella up and take her to lunch, just the two of us. Or I'm going to take James to the park and just play catch. So that's always been my attitude, is try to steal I say steal like it's a bad thing, but steal every little bit above that 50% that I can. On the flip side, I have had to have the talk with them of, you know, if this acting thing takes off, I might need to go away because not a lot of movies are shot in St. Petersburg or Tampa. So if I need to go away for, you know, if Marvel wants me to be in a movie, I'm probably going to be, out of the country for 3 months. And to that, my son gets upset. My daughter's like, that would be the coolest thing ever, because she wants to be an actress. So.
Oh, okay. So she understands that pursuit.
She wants to ship me out as much as possible.
So where does the show, in addition to your Jeff Macolino podcast, you're doing the YouTube one where you're getting a little bit buzzed and eating fast food, where does The Man show up here?
That's on YouTube and Twitch, Monday through Friday, usually at 6:00 p.m.
So is the Twitch network or the Twitch app, is that a live streaming podcast type thing?
Yes, yeah. So it is live. So we have a decent amount of audience interaction, even though it's a small audience. It adds a lot when the comments get riled up while you're live, and it can kind of help push things in certain directions.
So when you're doing a show on Twitch and and it's live, it's being streamed, and you have people commenting, how are you able to focus on the conversation, the camera, and the comments all at the same time?
It's not easy. If we were doing a cooking one that was very labor intensive, and I'm in charge actually of monitoring the comments, and they were going off on YouTube live comments, and I had my head down working. So it's not easy. He has a producer. He shoots it in a studio, so he handles all the technical stuff. But that is my job, is to co-host and make sure I read him the comments as they come up. So I'm trying different methods of laying things out on my screen so they pop up so that I can't miss them. I haven't perfected it yet, but we're still under 20 episodes, so I'll probably get there.
So aside from the acting, which I know you really want to do for the future, of the things that you are doing right now, what are you finding most gratifying, most rewarding, and most fun?
Gosh, I think the one thing that I would do if I became a billionaire overnight, the one thing that I would not give up that I do creatively is the Jeff Macolino podcast. It just lets me talk to so many interesting people like yourself. And it just those conversations, they're not all great, but a lot of them are. And sometimes one interesting thing is I'll have episodes, and I'll be friends with these guests. For this week, I've probably communicated with 7 former guests through email about this or that. It's just one of those things that it's a nice community, I feel like, that I'm a part of. And sometimes I'll have a friend or a family member be like, I didn't particularly like that episode. I'm like, that's interesting. So it doesn't even, and sometimes I've only had a couple guests who are not that nice. And, I'll hear, oh, that was a great episode. It's like, oh man, I hated doing that one. but yeah, I wouldn't give it up because I also haven't pigeonholed myself, as you probably know. I can talk to anyone about anything. It's not only this, only that. So creatively, it really lets my mind go to places that I've never explored before. So that's probably the one that I find the most gratifying, and that's the way I view it too. Is if I was a billionaire and which of these things would I keep doing? I think I'd still do that podcast because I just enjoy it too much. I mean, I might get someone else to schedule and edit and all that stuff, but
as long as you're a billionaire, you might as well have someone else do the work.
Oh yeah. I would just show up and have the conversation. I'd just be the face and the voice, not the worker behind the scenes.
Okay, next dream.
Yeah, right. And I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up, I'm a busy person. I do a sports show weekly called for FL Teams. It's an independent sports website that focuses on Florida sports. That's fun too. And that's one of those things where if I've got a background in sports, I love sports. I'm pretty intelligent when it comes to discussing it. So it's like, it's one of those other doors. It's like, hey, if my life takes me down that path, if somebody wants me to broadcast games or do whatever, I'll take it. That would be enjoyable too. So I keep my doors open.
If you were to be a part of a sports club or a franchise in the announcing booth, what sport or what team would you choose to announce for?
That's a good question. I think I feel like baseball is a good sport for that kind of conversational thing. Vin Scully, who was the longtime Dodgers announcer, he would weave a story and he'd be telling a story and there's ball 2. Tell the story, blah, 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 foul ball, 2-1, and just continue the story while the game, I think Dwayne Statz, who's announced the Rays games, I guess that would be my dream, is take over when he retires. Take over that job. Just go down the street and announce Rays games. But I sat in the booth with him a couple times, because when I was in college, that was my dream, to be a sports broadcaster. Nicest man you will ever meet in the world. And he said something like, when you're broadcasting a game on TV, sometimes less is more. The viewer can see what's happening. You don't need to necessarily describe every single pitch. They can see it. It's not every ball and strike is exciting. So it gives you a little leash that you don't have in other sports. Because baseball is definitely the least action-packed of sports.
Right, you can let the pictures kind of speak.
Exactly.
Okay, so now, since you're a baseball fan, and I am too, what do you think about the upcoming new rules that are beyond proposal? They're actually going to be taking place in the 23 season.
I hate the shift rule.
You hate the shift rule?
I hate banning the shift. I feel like it's an attack on the Tampa Bay Rays, because even though I always say the Rays are the ones who really popularized doing that. I mean, they used to do that back with Ted Williams, so it's like, and that even more so, it's like, it's always been part of the game. I mean, yeah, it's more so now, but my thing is always, why don't the hitters just hit the ball, learn to hit better?
Right, should a hitter not be able to adjust his style to be able to hit to all fields instead of just being the same kind of a hitter all the time?
Yeah, I think that's the weakness, in my opinion, in baseball. I think the popularity seems to be dwindling, is because there's not enough action. The game's built too much on the three outcomes: a walk, a strikeout, a home run.
Right.
Home run's exciting. Walk's not exciting. Strikeout's not exciting. There's very little base stealing. Nobody knows how to bunt. And I understand, again, the Rays are on the forefront of sabermetrics, and you don't give up outs in this new day and age, because math says that sacrifice bunting is, if you never do it, you're better than if you do it even sometimes. I get it. My favorite player when I worked for the Rays, and before I worked for the Rays and after I worked for the Rays, was Carl Crawford. He didn't walk much. I think his career high in home runs was probably 19 or something. He stole 60 bases. He was a slap speed hitter. He hit a lot of triples. He stole a lot of bases. Most exciting player to watch. He wasn't a great outfielder, could run down the ball, do amazing athletic things. And I feel like that kind of player is kind of being shifted away from. Like, if you can't get on base, you can't hit home runs, you're kind of not that valuable anymore.
After the shift is being proposed because they expect that the game is going to become more offensive and teams will score more runs and the game will be more action-packed. And so I can understand it from that perspective, but I also agree with you in the sense that hitters need to be more versatile and be able to hit the other way or whatever it's going to take. So yeah, banning the shift, I'm not exactly in favor of 100% either.
Yeah, and I know they're making the bases bigger.
They are. They're going to make them 18 square inches instead of 15, which they say also mathematically and statistically will increase the number of stolen bases and reduce injury.
That one, I was a little like, I don't get it. Why would you do that? But in thinking of it, that's exactly I think I'm gonna like. Stolen bases are a fun part of the game.
They really are. What about the shift, the pitch clock?
I'm gonna be very interested to see how that comes into play, because they fiddled around at times with clocks on certain things, and seems like the umpires sometimes enforce things, sometimes don't. I'm going to be curious how much. I mean, I was skeptical a couple years ago when they limited, like, you can't bring in a pitcher for less than 3 batters unless he ends the inning.
Right.
And I was like, well, the lefty specialist is going to disappear. Well, no, not really. They just bring them in when there's 2 out of 3 lefties coming up, and a lefty needs to know how to get a right-handed hitter out also. Kind of same thing
yeah.
we were saying with hitting. So that, I don't think's really affected the game. If anything, maybe it's helped less delays.
Well, they trialed it out at the minor league level, and it seems to have worked, and it definitely has cut down on the length of time, and I think that a lot of non-baseball fans don't like it because it does drag on and on and on, so maybe that might help.
I don't mind. I like that they're trying things to rejuvenate the game. It's unfortunate because the franchise I root for and that I worked for was very into the analytics. It gives small market teams a chance to compete. Look at how successful the Rays have been in the last 15 years. I think there's only been 2 franchises that have won more games. One, of course, in the division, the Yankees. But so it levels the playing field. But I feel like some of the results of it have made baseball a little less exciting and more mathematical.
Oh yeah, I think that it's all about the numbers nowadays. Yeah,
and it's as cool as it was to see it implemented. Now that it's here, it's like, all right, well, I watched the Rays get eliminated in a 1-0 15-inning game, and I don't think my kids don't have the patience to sit through a game like that.
Well, thank goodness for the Ghost Runner rule because that's being put into effect from now on. It's going to be a forever thing. So, in extra innings, so I think that's going to help also shorten the games and will increase fan enjoyment.
Yeah, that was probably the thing I still am on the fence about. But at the same time, I remember, as exciting as games can be, if there are two teams that are not in the playoff race in September, and that game's dragging into a 13th, 14th inning, you really contemplate whether you want to keep watching, whether you want to be there. When I worked for the team, I'm just like, I remember I actually had a date on a Friday night, and this game, the Rays and Blue Jays went into 15 innings, I think. And I'm looking at the clock. I'm like, I'm not going to make this. Sorry.
Yeah, I think those extra inning games from a player perspective, they don't want to be out there for 4.5 hours and risking injury and getting injured. The only people who benefit by these long extra inning games are the concessions.
Yeah. And I'm wondering, I should know the answer to this, because they cut off beer sales in the 7th inning, alcohol sales in the 7th inning.
That's a pisser if you go into the 13th.
You know, veterans like myself, we make sure we have enough to get through the 10th. But beyond that, I mean, that's they don't reopen those if the game goes past 9 innings.
So do you want to make a couple of early predictions before the 23 season gets off?
I'll stick with what I predict every year, which is I always predict the Rays to win the World Series, because one year I'll be right. One gripe I've always had with baseball is I do think, other than football is very fluky, I think, as far as what team wins the championship. You know, just the best team can have one bad game and that's it. Baseball can be so, in the playoffs, I feel like the best team doesn't always win. It's who's hot at the time.
Well, also that corporate mentality of expanding the playoffs to include too many teams that are really not worthy does definitely shift the perspective and the outcome.
Yeah, it's an interesting, I like the exclusivity of the Major League postseason, just being 8 teams that, you know, it meant that a couple good teams are not going to make the playoffs, and that's okay. You know, the NBA and the NHL, I think they're 16 out of 32 teams. Actually, the NBA just expanded to, I think, 20 teams, because now they have the 7 and the 10 and the 8 and 9 play each other. So it's like 20 out of 32 teams don't deserve to make the playoffs.
I know. Where's the motivation? When everyone's going to the playoffs almost on an automatic, then where's the motivation to win?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing, because I'm also a diehard Tampa Bay Lightning fan, and it's like, well, we know the Lightning are going to make the playoffs, so the regular season's just like practice. It's like, it doesn't matter if we're the 1 seed or the 8 seed, as long as we're in, we know we're going to, you know, we've gone to 3 straight Stanley Cups, so, you know, we know we're going to compete in the playoffs. Let's get through these games. You know, this is the point of the season where it's like, get sharper, but can we just get to the playoffs already?
Right. Well, Jeff, as we start to wrap it up here, I do want to ask you, in your opinion, who's doing the best work in the fast food world right now? What place is most delicious for you?
I'm going to give a 1A and a 1B, if that's acceptable. 1A has got I love Arby's. I think it is the highest quality of fast food. They do try new things. Not everything's perfect that they try, but they try new things, so they keep it fresh. Arby's is like the butt of the joke a lot of times, I feel like, but it's not cheap fast food in price or quality, in my humble opinion.
Are people still giving any love to the whole horsey sauce thing? Because I remember in my youth, that was one of my favorite parts of Arby's.
I still like horsey sauce. I've got lots of horsey sauce and Arby's sauce packets in my fridge. I collect the ones I don't use, because I know I'll use them eventually.
Oh, yeah.
And 1B, I'll shout out Chipotle, which I never considered fast food, but I think by definition of fast food it is. And I know someone who works in their corporate structure, and I ask questions all the time, and I've come to very much respect all of their stuff is legitimately very fresh. That, you know, I asked why they don't have ground beef, and the answer is it wouldn't be fresh enough for us to serve. And I'm like, I wish you had ground beef, but I respect the business model. They're really, I would say that if you look, and they do have a calculator on their website that actually makes it easier. If you look at their macros, you could very easily eat Chipotle every day for 30 days. Maybe that should be an experiment. Just eat Chipotle for 30 days, and I bet you could lose a lot of weight and not be hungry.
Yeah, I've heard people say that before, people who are trying to reduce carbs and also get their health together and so on, being able to go to a place like Chipotle, which has fresh food, and like steer clear of the tortilla chips and steer clear of the rice and just go for the fresh ingredients.
Yeah, it's very, and there's so many options. It doesn't get boring. You can always try a new combination of toppings or meat or whatever. So I got to give them a shout out just because I never really considered them fast food, but I think again you can get it delivered to your house. You could go there and get a burrito or a bowl in 5 minutes made for you. That's pretty fast.
That is fast. Yeah, I think you're right.
By definition, I have to count it as fast food.
So what's coming up next? Where can people get a hold of you or see you do your thing or whatever?
I'm all over the internet. The Jeff Macolino podcast, that's my baby. You can find that anywhere you listen to podcasts. The Man Show Live right now, mainly on YouTube, also on Twitch. That's the Man showlive.com is the website for that. And I guess follow me on social media and you'll find out everything else. And my YouTube channel is just Jeff Macolino, just my name. I do put some podcast clips on there also, and of course Drunk Jeff Eats is my main thing right now. And social media, I'm Saint J-Mac, like the football team, Saint.
I like J-Mac. That. Good.
On Instagram and Twitter, a couple other places, I think. I'm not good with social media. But I plug my stuff on there. So.
Well, that's good. It seems like you're really enjoying yourself right now. You're in a good phase, and so it's nice to see that.
Yeah. It's very nice when you can look at the calendar and say, I'm working a 16-hour day today. And I enjoy every single thing I'm doing. Except for looking at the calendar.
Well, when you're a billionaire, you won't even have to do that.
Yep, my assistant handled that, right?
Well, Jeff, thank you so much for coming on. It's been a lot of fun, and definitely stay in touch. I want to keep up to date with what's happening with you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Take care. We'll talk soon.
Bye.